Georgia Law, Sarah has served her class as 1L Vice President for Section Y, 2L Class Vice President, and finally the 3L Class President. She's also a member of the editorial board and an articles editor of the Georgia Law Review. Welcome, Sarah.
Good morning. President Moorhead, Dean Rutledge, Judge Jones, distinguished faculty, fellow graduates, honored guests, family, and friends. On behalf of the Georgia Law class of 2015, welcome to this year's commencement ceremony. I am so honored to have the opportunity to give this welcome address, but I have to be honest. When I was first told that I'd be speaking today, I panicked. A lot. And for two reasons. Primarily, I had no idea what I could possibly say to this group of professors, classmates, and guests who undoubtedly have more experience and knowledge than I do, and all of whom are more qualified to give this speech. And secondly, and more embarrassingly, I was really afraid that nobody would laugh at my jokes. After all, I'm not a stand-up comedian like Brian Stoltz. But after the panicking subsided, I was able to figure out a way to address both of these concerns. If the past 3 years at UGA Law has taught me anything, it is to search for the most effective solution to a problem and to implement it in a clear and concise way. So, to encourage you all to laugh at my jokes, I've made you a cue card. This way, if you completely zone out or simply don't think my jokes are funny, just laugh when you see the cue card. When all else fails, remember the cue card. Unfortunately, my primary concern could not be addressed with something as simple as a cue card. I reached out to professors, spoke with friends, and called every member of my family, and everyone gave me great advice about how to approach this speech. However, no one could compete with the almighty power of Google. It took almost no time at all for Google to tell me exactly what to say to make this speech memorable and inspirational. So, while I appreciate the input of everyone I spoke with, I'm afraid I'm going to have to go with Google. So here it is, the perfect commencement welcome address in just 42 steps. Just kidding, there are only 5. Step number 1, tell a joke or a funny story to grab the audience's attention. Okay, 2 UGA Law grads walk into the bar. Well, I guess we'll have to wait until October to let you know how that one ends. But see, I told you I'm no stand-up comedian, so let's practice with the cue card. Step number 2, share a few stories or memories about your time at this university. Well, honestly, right now, only a few days after the end of final exams, it's pretty easy to think about some of the not-so-fun things we've done over the past 3 years. The thousands of pages of reading, the hundreds of hours spent in the law library, and the terrified feeling of getting called on when you're unprepared for class. But really, when we look back on our time spent at UGA, I'm pretty sure those won't be the things that come to mind. What we'll actually remember are the tailgates on North Campus and cheering for the dogs on Saturdays. We'll remember going to Barrister's Ball and only occasionally going to Magnolias on Thursday nights. We'll remember the relief we felt after our last final of 1L year and then heading to the Georgia Theater to celebrate with one another. And thanks to Dean Kurtz, we will always remember that class registration is not first come, first served. Step number 3, discuss how your class will be remembered by others. Well, obviously, I had no idea how our class would be remembered by others. So for this step, I reached out to a few of our professors. I asked each of them to share a memory they'd have about our class or a piece of advice they'd like us to keep in mind as we leave UGA Law. And it was undoubtedly one of the best things I've gotten to do in law school because I finally got to give them an assignment. So how will our professors remember the class of 2015? Professor Baradaran will remember our class as the first group of 1Ls she taught here at UGA. And she will remember when Amanda McDowell described her as, and here I quote, that one professor who started class on the first day by walking in and grilling a student mercilessly for the entire class period. Professor Shipley will remember us as the class that did a slightly cringeworthy version of the Gangnam Style video. And he'll remember thinking that Kerry Miller was beginning his campaign to become the governor of Georgia for 2030 only a few weeks into our first semester of law school. Dean Rutledge will remember our class as full of careful listeners like Hillary Kinsey, zealous advocates like Whitney Judson, and inquisitive minds like Veronica O'Grady. And George Ray, Dean Rutledge would also like to let you know that we've finally forgiven you for attending Georgia Tech for undergrad. Professor Coonan will remember our class for the not-so-subtle April Fool's joke spearheaded by Peyton Bell, in which every member of his Con Law 2 class turned in a note saying they were unprepared to discuss the class materials for that day. He'll remember our class as, and I quote, totally awesome. Dean Brown would like former Section X to remember that Tom Haverford's Tommy Fresh smells better than Diddy's Unforgivable. Unfortunately, I wasn't in Dean Brown's class, so let's use the cue card for this one too. Professor Watson hopes that her former students will remember enough criminal law to stay out of trouble. And Professor Lanier would like all of us to remember the things that drew us to study law and to use that spark to help to evolve the profession to better serve the community. And finally, Professor Rodriguez wants all of us to remember that Georgia law will always be a home for us and to come back and visit often. Step number 4, gratitude. Be sure to take time to thank all the people that helped you on this journey. This one I took a bit more seriously. First, to all of our professors, thank you for teaching us how to think. You've forced us to think critically, analyze problems from all sides, and argue for our positions. You've prepared us for our future practice, even though we probably looked like deer in the headlights most of the time. Secondly, to my classmates, thank you for being competitive. We've pushed each other, held each other accountable, and helped each other survive. And even though the past 3 years have been challenging, we've managed to have some fun along the way. And last, but certainly not least, to all of our family members and friends, thank you all sincerely for putting up with us. The panic phone calls, the missed Thanksgiving breaks, and the endless explanations of torts law that you probably didn't really care about. You've endured them all, and for this we are truly grateful. We would never have made it this far without you. Step number 5, conclusion. Wrap up with some inspirational words and bring your audience full circle. Well, I don't know about inspirational words, but I've had the time of my life getting to know and learning from each of you. We're all graduating, moving on, and about to begin our careers, and no matter how we plan on using our legal degrees, we will each have the opportunity to use our knowledge and skills to help others. We're about to enter a field of practice that can be very fulfilling, but can also be tough, time-consuming, and stressful. So we should all remember to channel our inner Ferris Bueller, who said it best. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. So don't forget to take the time to keep in touch with friends you've made here, watch the dogs play on Saturdays, and spend time with your families. Remember to keep a sense of humor. Remember to laugh. Maya Angelou said, "Laugh as much as possible. Always laugh. It is the sweetest thing one can do for oneself and one's fellow human being." So I guess my cue card wasn't such a bad idea after all. Congratulations, class of 2015. Go Dogs. It is now my distinct honor to introduce the president of the Georgia Law Alumni